All right. Our last show of the night. Let me invite George and JR into the chat with you all. Let me pull up. Yo, yo.
What's up?
Last show of the night.
Thank
Adam,
God.
first one here. Bob, hiya. Boy, the numbers been real good tonight. You guys are wanting some history club tonight. That's impressive. I like that we're streaming on 4 platforms too. That's kind of cool. Let me pull this up. There we go. Got it. Brad, who is the picture of the old guy in the old frame behind you? The old guy in the frame behind. Are you talking about that's the 70s Spider-Man costume I used to wear as a kid? I've got it hanging on a hanger on the back door. Is that what you're talking about? Oh, here, I'll put Adam's question up on that. And over my shoulder there is a Joe Jusko painting of the corner box by Ditko. Right there. So it's from the 70s. Hornacek, obviously the crawl space fans want more clones. Oh, did I not send the thing to George? I mean, JR, copy the clipboard. There you go, JR. No, I sent it to him. No, it's some guy with white. Oh, you're talking about that. This right here is an Aunt May action figure. There you go. That's Aunt May. I had to buy it. When has Aunt May ever had an action figure? It's from Toy Biz. It's the famous covers Aunt May. I bought this at a local comic shop. Came out in 1997. Some assembly required for this Aunt May figure. Evidently, she has arthritis. Wonder what it says inside the box. It says, when Peter Parker was left as an orphan, his uncle Ben and Aunt May took him in and raised him themselves, learning responsibility and kindness from them. Peter eventually grew up to become the crime-fighting hero Superman. My God. Presented here as she appeared in the classic ASM 115, Aunt May has inadvertently found herself on the side of Dr. Octopus, afraid and distressed. So, yeah, she's pointing the gun at Peter. That's how she looked. So, Adam says, oh my God, that is classic. Does it come with the wheat cake mix? Nope, it doesn't. It's just Aunt May looking real old. There you go. So, Brad, are you still getting the Spider-Man futon? No, I'm not. I think you're talking about that huge thing. I don't have room for that. Diabetic Superman. Oh, no. Diabetic Superman. Hey, Brad and George, what's going on?
Diabetic Spidey is an old schooler from back in the day from the message board.
Oh, nice. ASM 115, a classic. I liked it. It's memorable. It's not as offensive as these clone books we're going to talk about. JR in the house.
Alrighty.
Wait, you missed it. They were asking about my Aunt May action figure over here.
Aunt May action figure.
Have you never seen this?
Oh yeah, I've seen it, but I'm just wondering how much action can you get out of a.
Well, as I said earlier, some
figure.
assembly required over here. There you go. I think I bought that for $10 at a local convention. I said I never had that, and oh yeah, Matt, I do have the Joe Jusko Marvel swimsuit. It's actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's rolled up. I need to hang it up, but
I'll be right back.
All right. So, are you ready, ladies and gentlemen, for more clones? Because the fans demanded it. Here, we'll wait for George to come back because guess what, buddy? You've got as much time as you want on this one. This is our last show of the night. You could have used the extra time on the other one.
I was about to say this one I could have gone through fairly quickly. The other one could have had a little more fun with.
Well, this one I picked as the September history. So,
yeah, because it was the 45th anniversary.
45th anniversary of the original Clone Saga. We'll talk about that once George gets back. But hey, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, ask us questions. We'll answer them while we're waiting to get started here. We've got 2 on Twitch. We got 3 on Facebook, 18 from YouTube, and 0 on Twitter. Diabetic Superman says, hello, JR.
Hello, Diabetic Superman. I don't. That's a new name. I don't remember Diabetic.
No, George was just saying he's original old message board poster. So that's kind of cool. That's
so
neat.
What was the original? Lactose intolerant Superman or something? I mean...
interesting fact, Bob says, ASM 149 was my first comic. I was homesick from school. My dad brought me back the issue and Marvel Team Up 65 with Captain Britain. Yeah. I was born this year, so I was not doing much. 1975, that was the year I was born. So, well, how old were you in 75, JR?
30, right?
30, yeah.
No, I was 12.
Yeah. Why didn't we make the story that August episode and then give JR as much time as he wanted for clonage? Well, it's just the way I picked it. I saw that Maximum Clonage Alpha came out in August.
Yeah.
And I try to tie the books into the month that we're in with the month that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make Maximum Clonage 25 years old, and it makes this story 45 years old. You think we'll revisit it in 5 years on the 50th anniversary of the original Clone Saga?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, the Clone Saga from the 70s isn't nearly as awful compared to Maximum Clonage. Then again, that's pretty low bar, says McNulty. Very true. I would agree. JR, I've seen this Conway clone story referred to as a classic. Do you agree with that? Says
Adam. Absolutely. It is a classic. Yeah. I mean, it's it starts off really as a kind of a
got some echo on you, JR. You got anything playing?
No.
I don't hear an echo on him.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this was the original Clone Saga was because it had its origins in another mysterious who is this masked figure, and it was the Jackal, and it lasted about 20 issues. It wrapped up within 2 years. It had a logical. It was a surprise to see who the supervillain was, and it was I consider it a classic.
Did you guys see Star Trek Lower Decks? I have not. The new cartoon from Star Trek on. Well, I don't imagine these two fellows sign up for CBS All Access.
No, but the first episode was on YouTube for free. Like the first step, I got through about half of it and couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, JR, I saw where I thought about you this week because I saw where the audience for Picard fell off by like almost 50%.
Why?
After the first episode.
It's awful.
Is that because the first episode was free on YouTube? Because that would explain the paywall. That makes sense.
No, it's because the story was just a gross, awful story.
Did you watch the whole thing, JR?
No, but I watched the first episode, and I listened to Mr. Plankett's review.
That's not fair. You can't judge it on a review.
I'll say this though, as somebody who's been a long time Star Trek fan, and as someone who swears like a sailor sometimes, I'm not down with the language on Star Trek. I'm just not. It's jarring. If Kirk and Spock and McCoy had been dropping F-bombs in the 60s on the show, that would be one thing. If it had been consistent for its 50-year history, then sure, I would be okay. That's fine. It's commonplace. Today, it's just jarring as hearing Darth Vader call somebody something I'm not supposed to say on the podcast anymore.
Star Trek is supposed to envision us in the future, and I guarantee you, if we solve hunger and racism, etc., by Star Trek's time, I still think swearing is going to be there. Swearing has been around forever.
It would, but the thing is, Brad, swearing hasn't been there since the series first came on.
It's because they were banned by the FCC.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Bones cussed in the movies.
Brad, he gave up mild cussing. I mean, there's people dropping F-bombs on Star Trek now. And I'm like,
one F-bomb.
I'm like, no,
season.
I'm done. I'm done.
No.
I'm done.
George and JR know what's up. Agreed, George.
No.
Okay.
No, and I saw like the first episode of season 2 of Discovery on YouTube, and I honestly, I had to stop and start about 3 times to make sure that I got through it. I couldn't do it. I mean, that Michael, everything they say about that Michael Burnham character is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Real quick, we got a couple questions on chat. I want to get you guys' opinions before we actually start. Jonathan wants to know what we think of DC getting gutted. It's a rough story, man.
We talked about this on the most recent podcast.
Did we? Because this news just came out this week.
No, we covered it. I thought we covered it. I thought we covered DC.
No, it was this week that
seemed like somebody asked us about it already, because I remember specifically saying, "Yeah, it's a horrible thing. Getting laid off is terrible. It is. I mean, it is horrible, and I've been through it twice, and it is effed up. And I wouldn't wish that on people I dislike.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I absolutely understand why it's being done. And a lot of this goes right back on DC leadership.
Do you think Marvel's going to have this happen to them? Is what Jonathan also asks. I think Disney's got a little bit more money. AT&T bought Warner, and they're cash strapped. Right?
I don't think Disney cares all that much about what Marvel Publishing is doing. Frankly,
yeah,
I don't. I just don't think that they're doing it. If Marvel Publishing was suddenly making a loss instead of turning a profit, I don't even think. I mean, it wouldn't even be that big in the big. Well, I take that back. Disney is cash strapped right now because of coronavirus.
Fox. Yeah. They bought Fox.
They bought
the parks.
They spent a lot of money on Fox, and they are taking it in the shorts from all the time that they had to close down during Corona.
Yeah,
and they are very well. I about to say they're very cash poor. They're cash poor for Disney.
Yeah,
Disney at the end of the day, but
JR, any thoughts on Disney's firing? I mean, DC's firing.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's who didn't see it coming, to be honest. I mean, really, it's the I don't know. I hesitate to say the comics industry it's in its declining days, because people have been saying that for 20 years, 25 years. It hasn't happened yet. But I mean, the comics industry, the people in comics have made horrid decisions. And to be honest, if you're a corporate, if you're an employer, and you see some of the Twitter conversations that are going on, and you see what Tom King tried to do to Jay Lee or whatever, he's because he was doing he did a cover for Ethan Van Sciver or whatever, and Tom King tried to have him canceled, trying to ruin this guy's career. I mean, just that kind of meanness and pettiness that's going on. Yeah, if I were a boss, I wouldn't have anything to do with it. I would get rid of him too. Honestly, I would.
Clover fan wants us to do a Star Trek podcast. No, we got enough.
Clover fan. That wasn't Clover fan. That was Jonathan Lopez. But Clover fan correctly pointed out earlier that because remember I said that it seemed like I'd already answered this. He pointed out that it was him asking me about it on Discord, or asking about it in Discord.
Oh, okay.
That's what I answered.
Okay.
That's how I remembered it.
Got it. There was another one before we start that I wanted to answer. Where was it? Here it is. Heroing wants to know what's our favorite Spider-Man one-shots. I like Parallel Lives a lot. That's another good one.
Yeah, that would have to be one of the better ones. Trying to think of another one. But it's hard to think of one, because frankly, so many of them are just blatant cash grabs, like miniseries. Very, very few of them are any good at all.
I think one shots are a rare breed anymore, because they want to get 5 issues. They want to sell you 5 issues. The last one shot I remember was at Mark Waid, where it introduced Teresa Parker. Yeah. And that's when they tried to bring back the
family business.
And I didn't care for it. I really didn't.
The one Web of Romance. There was one called Web of Romance a few years ago when Spider-Man was in the Avengers, and it was about him and Mary Jane or whatever. That was pretty good.
don't remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, and Peter made the custom web shooters for Mary Jane, you know, and no, that was, but yeah, there are very few of them are.
George, you got one? I can't think of one either very easily. Okay, let's get started, everybody. Coming down 3. Hey, welcome to our September Spider History with JR. What's going on, JR? You ready to go back 45 years to talk about clones again?
I am ready to go back to the time when I was 12 years old. And,
I was just being born in 1975. So and George was 3 years old. What's going on, George?
I was 3, and it was that year that somewhere around my birthday that my mother bought me that Marvel Team Up. I can't remember the number that had like Man Wolf and Frankenstein's monster, and
it's around issue 50,
37 and 38.
Oh,
and I couldn't read it. It made me want to get interested in reading. I've always credited Spider-Man with wanting to get me reading early on from an early age, but I looked at all the pictures, and that's when I decided to start drawing dinosaurs and things in there.
Hence the early love of Stegron.
Stegron.
Yeah.
Probably.
By the way, I went to eBay. I was like, you know what? I need to get that that Stegron figure that George has. Cheapest one I could find was $40 in box. So
I think when I bought it, it was 20.
Yeah.
Something.
So we are, like I said earlier at the top, we are going back to 1975 to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Clone Saga, the original. And like we did for the last several episodes we've recorded, I'm going to go to My Comic Shop, a Texas-based store. And if you want to get 147 they don't even have a mint copy. They got a very fine for $43. You can get it here. And do you guys?
It may have been the one I sold them.
There you go. So the Tarantula Takes the Game is the first part of this. JR, take me through it.
Well, the story begins right after the events of Giant-Sized Spider-Man number 5, where Spider-Man was down in Florida and facing off with the Man Thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was a giant-sized man thing. Whatever.
I don't get it. Why is that funny?
By the way, we got Jerry Conway and Ross Andrew.
Ross Andrew.
Ross Andrew, baby.
One of my faves.
Love Ross Andrew.
So Peter is going to Peter's coming back from Florida, and he stops in at the Daily Bugle essentially to tell Jonah that that trip to Florida you paid for, I didn't get any pictures. So Jonah, of course, reacts like Jonah does, throws him out of the office. But then Ned stops Peter. And of course, the real reason why we're here is because you remember, of course, back in issue number 144.
Mm-hmm.
It's when Gwen Stacy appeared to come back from the dead.
Right.
All right. And and then she showed up, I think, in issue 145, 146, she showed up at the Daily Bugle. And so anyway, so after what's happened is Ned took her to the doctor, and he's got the doctor's report on Gwen Stacy. All right. So anyway, but the scene shifts to the tarantula in the prison shoe shop. And of course, nothing is going to go wrong here. All right.
This one fits pretty good. Do you have an triple E?
Yeah. And nothing's going to go wrong here.
They're going to notice that.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to notice that a guy who one of his specialties was poison pointy shoes. So you're going to give him access to the prison shoe shop so he can make some more pointy shoes.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense.
Stabs the guard, jumps over the prison wall. There's a van picks him up, and the driver of the van who is helping him escape is the Jackal. All right. Now this is costume Jackal, not
Beavis.
Not Beavis.
Hairy green jackass Jackal driving a van.
Mutant. I think it was a tall, fuzzy Yoda, which is how he was described.
Look at how the Jackal rolls right there.
But the next scene here is actually kind of one of my favorites. It's kind of a classic, and I referenced it in my Mary Jane series. Okay. Because this is after one of Aunt May's numerous heart attacks. MJ and Anna Watson are picking her up from the hospital, and Anna's going to bring the car around. So Aunt May and Mary Jane have a chance to sit down and have some girl talk, and basically, Aunt May says, "How you and Peter been doing?" And Mary Jane says, "Well, since Gwen Stacy comes back, Peter has been blowing me off." And what's funny is between this and the next page, there is no doubt what Aunt May really thinks of Gwen and who Aunt May's favorite has always been.
Yeah. Aunt
May's favorite girl for Peter has always been Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And, it's, of course, she probably doesn't appreciate Gwen telling her to, piss off that one time, like when she did. Of course, then May had it coming too. But I just kind of like this because it just pretty well shows that Mary Jane from day one has always been May's favorite.
It's her best friend's kid. I mean, like since like Peter was a kid living with Aunt May and Uncle Ben, Aunt May's probably always had that in the back of her head.
Yeah.
That's how old people roll.
But it's Mary Jane that's who, and to me that's why. And this is one of those things where when Quesada, would say, "Oh, the marriage is rushed. The marriage is rushed," and no. I mean, back in the days, this is whom Aunt May had picked. This is the woman Aunt May chose for Peter. Aunt May, it's like she wanted to make sure that Peter was taken care of. When she, like any mother, May's no fool, regardless of how many writers have tried to write her like a senile old fool. May's no fool, but she had her eyes on Mary Jane from day one. That was the woman she had picked out for Peter, and that's the woman for him.
It's talking about how she fell in love with Ben.
Yeah, well, basically said if I'd left it up to Ben, I'd never gotten any action. So I had to go in there and,
take. That's not
wait a minute. Wait.
She says memories, JR.
Well,
you need to adjust your bifocal.
If I'd left things to him, I'd be an old maid and not even have my memories. At no point, we have panels now to show. At no point she say action. It was not her reward.
So what I'm hearing is we have visual proof that JR just makes crap up.
I know.
That's what I'm hearing.
I think you have to understand the times that it was told that this was a euphemism for action.
Memories, aka means action.
Yeah. So, but anyway. So anyway, but this was kind of like I said, a favorite of mine because, like I said, it always showed that May preferred Mary Jane, and it really Peter and Mary Jane. I mean, it was destiny. I mean, they are meant for each other. Okay, regardless of what Joe Quesada said, they were always meant for each other, and they got married quickly because they just woke up one day and realized it. It's kind of like, what the heck are we doing? We're fooling ourselves, by denying it. So anyway, go back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man's swinging around. And he's thinking about basically the medical report that Ned had was that Gwen was a clone. And I'm just thinking about how easily, I don't know. I'm just thinking about how easily and just offhanded, oh yeah, she's a clone, and yet how it took Peter and Ben, years later, it took them working together for hours on end to determine who was the clone and who was the real. And even then it was fake. Right. But then Spider-Man, he drops in front of a store with mirrors and he kind of sees Gwen. He's thinking, oh, what if there's like 10 Gwen Stacy, 100 Gwen Stacys, 1,000 Gwen Stacys all wanting a piece of me. And I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Just wait.
Just wait,
brother.
No idea how bad that is going to get.
He's literally looking into his future in the 90s is what he's seeing in those mirrors in 75.
One clone, you don't just stop at one clone,
It's kind of like a bag of potato chips. You can't eat just one, So. Go ahead, JR.
I'm sorry. I just kind of had to get over that moment of, just when you talk about just not being able to, it's visions, horde visions.
When you see that many clones in the mirror, what do? You got to smash it.
Yeah. So
Hulk smash.
So anyway, the cops come, draw their guns, and the tarantula shows up and takes them out so that he and Spider-Man can fight. And basically all this
fight too.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, we got to focus on it. I'm not even going to go there focusing on these kids. For some reason, there's these two kids, including one with a beanie, who they've got a comment on the Spider-Man and Tarantula fight. But anyway, Tarantula knocks Spider-Man into a bus. And anyway, in the interim, which you don't have, Brad, but I have here, is an ad for G.I. Joe meets the Amazing Atomic Man. Now, see, I don't know about you, but I had a couple of G.I. Joes in my day.
Yeah.
All right. I had a regular one, and then I had one with the beard. I mean, that was, you had bearded G.I. Joe.
It's almost like Norman Osborn kidnapped him and made him grow a beard.
and then but then they came out with the Amazing Atomic Man. And this is what this ad is, which a blatant ripoff of the $6 Million Man. Remember the $6 Million Man, boys and girls?
Yeah.
Okay. No. Except the Atomic Man has only one atomic leg and one human leg. Okay. And so he's showing how he can run 200 miles an hour, but he's got one human leg. So it's like, how does he do this without the other one, the real one, either falling off, or how does he run this fast without, because if his heart's still human, how does he run 200 miles an hour without his heart giving out? I don't understand it, but anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
All right. So
probably got adrenaline injectors throughout his body, something like that.
Of course, that's what it's got to be. But anyway, so the bus, of course, Spider-Man and Tarantula are fighting on the bus. Yeah. And Hyman. Hyman.
Good Lord.
Honest to God.
Keep going.
Does anybody not? Does anybody not? It's like, do the editors not read these pages? Anyway, so they're fighting, and everybody at one stop, everybody gets off the bus. All right, and then at another stop, the Gwen clone gets on the bus, and the driver is just saying, "Please move to the back of the bus. Please move to the back of the bus." And Spider-Man is thinking, I don't know what in the world is going on with this driver. It's like, and then of course the driver takes off. It's like, okay, so wait a minute,
Mission Impossible style.
How did, first of all, the Jackal? He's got the mask with the big ears, right? How did he get that regular human mask?
You're thinking too much. You're thinking too much.
All right. So how does he do that? That's real science fiction.
Let's just keep rolling on this bus while the guys
they wind up driving to the Brooklyn Bridge, of course, before it was overplayed. And Tarantula gets him with a poison pointy shoe. And when Spider-Man wakes up, he's in chains, and the Jackal kind of gives a little clue to his motives that, this is because I hate you so much because what you do to this poor girl, I gave her life. And then the Jackal makes a reference to, because you killed Gwen 2 years ago, which is kind of funny because that's exactly how much time had passed in real time. So Tarantula kicks Spider-Man off the bridge. Spider-Man's dropping to his death, and to be continued. But next issue, after 20 issues, the mystery will be revealed. Who is the Jackal?
So we didn't know Miles Warren at this point, huh?
We did not.
I'll be.
Clone Gwen's just watching all that and saying, "Oh boy, that was a snap."
Mm-hmm.
Too soon.
I love it. All right. So we pick it back up. The cover is referencing what happened last issue. Look at that. That's rare.
Yep. And revealed at last the shattering secret of the Jackal. Now, I have to admit, I had been I just couldn't wait for this issue.
Yeah.
Just absolutely. and of course you never knew, this is the 70s, right? So you never knew when. You had no wizard, you had no previews,
no crawl space, no internet.
You had no direct market. So, I mean, it was just absolutely agonizing waiting because you never knew when the issues were going to come out.
I bought this issue at a used bookstore, a small used bookstore, because before you had comic shops, you had used bookstores, and they usually had comics.
Yeah.
And I remember buying this one sometime in the early 80s.
Yeah. And I remember, of course, couldn't wait for this issue, and of course was pestering my mother to go to the newsstand all the time.
Good cliffhanger.
All of the, because I had to find out who the Jackal was. Well, I had a baseball game that day because I played Little League baseball, and it turned out my mother had stopped at the newsstand and got the issue, and my brother, being the little worm and little toad that he was, kept threatening to reveal who the Jackal was.
Oh no!
Before I had a chance to read it, and so he would sit there and go, "The Jackal's name is," and
no.
and then he said Harold Bales, who was one of my teammates or whatever, but my brother was a little shit, So anyway.
This is why I'm glad I'm an only child.
Same.
So anyway, so Spider-Man has fallen to his death, right? Just like Gwen Stacy did all those years ago. And he really.
By the way, look at the title, Jackal. Jackal. Who's got the Jackal? Or is that Tackle? Is that a J or a T?
No, why? That didn't make any sense, Brad. Why would you say Jackal? Jackal. Who's the tackle?
Oh, who's got the Jackal? Okay,
that doesn't make any sense at all.
I thought it looked like a T down there. Okay, it's the Jackal.
The thing is, I wonder why. What the thing is, I wonder if where the Jackal sent his laundry, because he's got bleach stains all over his costume. It just looks bad. So but then
I think that's light reflecting, but I get you.
It's the 70s. The coloring. The coloring wasn't. It wasn't always working right. That's why the Hulk wound up being green, because gray didn't. And sometimes why Spider-Man would look like he was naked, because the blue wouldn't get printed. So anyway, so Spider-Man's like kind of being in chains or whatever. He's not got any flexibility. He can't get a web line off or whatever, and he's falling. I'm falling to my death. But he finally gets one off, and inertia causes him to swing back and forth, and he crashes back into the bridge and knocks himself out. So, but anyway, and then the Jackal and Tarantula and Gwen Stacy all fly away by a jetpack that the Jackal puts together.
What's he?
Shiny
Jackal's disturbing.
There he goes. Let's get out of here, guys.
more bleach stains on his costume. But anyway, so Spider-Man's just hanging there unconscious, and so the cops pick him up, and rather than leave him chained up like that so he can't get away or break loose, the cop wants to look good, so they take the chains off him, put handcuffs on him, and they're going to have a big reveal with taking his mask off. And
how's it going to look, you boob?
So Spider-Man gets away, though. Taking advantage of the cops' incompetence, and so Peter goes home, and of course he's had a long day, and Mary Jane, like any other woman, just can't read the tea leaves. She is going to have a conversation. She is going to have it out. This is
look, Peter looks disheveled. Look at that.
Yeah, he's like. And the next page is her storming up the stairs following him, because she is going to have this conversation, and he is
this minute. Poor Pete, not a good time for the brother.
Yeah, she just doesn't get the hint.
Oh,
it must suck to be Peter to have a hot redhead demanding to spend time with you. Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah,
man.
Poor Peter.
Oh man. Oh, he slams the door in her face. Oh, Pete.
Yeah, but then he realizes,
Lord, what have I done?
Yeah. What the WT actual F?
Wait, of course she's gone, Pete. You're an idiot.
Yeah, and fortunately he realizes that that was pretty stupid. But then again, of course, he goes and he takes a bath.
I like how this comic is so old. They've got the bubble bath in a carton. In a box,
Yeah. And this is why I this is why anybody buys Spider-Man comics, right? To see Peter Parker soaking in the bathtub.
Rubber ducky, you're the one.
Anyway, he hears a knock at the door. He thinks it's Mary Jane, but it's just Ned Leeds.
Look at all the soap over Peter.
Yeah. I mean, honest to God, it's like, how would you be expecting Mary Jane and then it's Ned? What a killer that one was. Talk about a cold shower. So anyway, Ned, starts thinking. He says, "Oh, Peter, ever since we found out Glenn was a clone, blah 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 blah. Who could, and says." So who had access to, genetic samples of Gwen? And Peter goes, I remember that time in Professor Warren's class, where we all donated genetic samples. And so, Ned says, let's go find out what happened to those samples.
Can we just point out real quick while Brad's got the art up, how creepy how creepy Warren looks out of the suit. Like the suit is not as creepy as the actual guy in it.
It's kind of like Willem Dafoe and the Green Goblin mask. Dafoe out of the mask is creepier than the Power Ranger suit.
So anyway, they go to see Miles Warren, of course, and ask him about the samples. And yeah, sure, I remember that. Oh, they ought to be right here, And then all of a sudden, of course, they're gone. And who took them? Well, it must have been my lab assistant, Anthony Serba. So, well, of course.
Who is not a very attractive man.
He kind of looks like he's the Gibbon or something. He's going to be the Gibbon one day.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, great, Anthony Serba, somebody we never heard of, is going to be the Jackal,
Yeah.
So Spider-Man decides to go to Cerberus' last known address, and of course, he's not there, but Tarantula is.
Look at this beautiful looking Andrew art. Look at this. I love this.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of like there.
Greetings, amigo. Now we shall finish our business. See,
and of course, now that Spider-Man is ready for him, he doesn't stand much of a chance against Spider-Man. So, so Spider-Man pretty well cleans his clock, pretty easily. But then last page.
By the way, first you don't forget you got to drink some Blatt's beer.
Yeah, product placement
from Blatt's beer. So last page, what were you saying?
No, I was about to say, here's the last page.
Oh, here's the reveal.
Yeah.
45 years ago this month, and we learned that Miles Warren.
The Jackal comes up behind him and drugs him with the claws. And, how did you sneak up on me? And the Jackal says, well, your spider sense only warned you about your enemies, and I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend.
I'm with George on this. Put the mask back on, brother. You're better looking.
The Jackal is Professor Warren, and I just
Hornacek wants to know when was the last time before this issue we'd seen Miles Warren. Do you remember, JR?
Boy, good question. Because I know that he was there in the. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's been.
He didn't show up that much. I remember when he was there, like in the third Vulture issues, 127, 128.
Okay.
He was asking Mary Jane if she had seen Peter, and I don't know that he had appeared.
Yeah, nowhere. Hornacek wants to know if Serba later was retconned to be a spider clone. Do you remember that?
Yes. When, for example, back when remember when we were talking about when we were last month when we were talking about the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 8 and how a girl by the name of Joyce Delaney was kidnapped and injected with some tissue from Gwen. Anthony Serba was Peter Parker. Okay. So that's how they explained who Peter was, and how there appeared to be a Peter clone. It was really Anthony Serba who'd been injected with Peter Parker's DNA.
I like how Adam Winchell in chat says he looks like John Bolton.
Yeah, he kind of does.
No, he does look like John Bolton.
Yep.
WTF says that.
And of course, I had.
By the way, oh, go ahead, JR.
No, I was about to say, I had, of course, absolutely no. I mean, I'm terrible at prognostication, so I had absolutely no idea that Jackal was going to be Professor Warren. But boy, I thought it was cool though, because
You thought it was cool. I was just going to ask you that. What you thought of your reveal? Yeah.
I thought it was cool because it was somebody I didn't expect. Apparently, a few people did guess it, but for the most part, it was not a whole lot of people guessed it. It was pretty much a surprise. But he'd been a character. I mean, it wasn't inconsistent. He'd been a character who'd been around a long time. It wasn't one of those like Eddie Brock being Venom. Like who the heck is this?
Yeah.
And ultimately, his motivations which were kind of creepy, did still kind of make some kind of sense.
So the next issue, I want to find out the value of it. Let me take a look here. I will, because the next issue is the one that everyone cites. It's the infamous cover, 149, where you got two clones. So let me go to my comic shop. Let me go down to 49 here. Let's see. What guys, take a guess. How much you think a near mint copy of this one's going to go for?
$40.
I think it'd be higher than that, just because there is that. There's people that like the clone stuff, so I bet it's priced.
Fine is $54. If you CGC, it's at slabbed. It's $900.
Well, it's
slab.
You can also get it slabbed for like 117.
So if it's a 6.9, 6.5 at a fine, I'd say double that. $100 would be a fair near mint price if they had it in stock. I bet you that's what it would go for. What do you think? Anyway, so let's go to this one. 149. Oh, web slinger must slay the other, or Ned Leeds is doomed. Either way, the Jackal will have his revenge. The astonishing climax of the, what does it say? The Spidey Jackal War. This is not the climax. This is just getting started. And JR, even if I live, I die.
Yeah, it was. And who thought it would be revived 20 years later?
Yeah.
But then again, Norman came back after 20 something years too. They brought Professor Warren back after 20 years. And then, good night, Jonathan. Good night, SoFlo. Wow, we're losing people.
We're losing them.
What happened? They just, they stayed long enough to find out who the Jackal was, and
they're out.
Yeah, the spoilers. They got the reveal, and now they're done. But no, I thought it was an interesting reveal, and so the next issue starts out with a recap, obviously, of what's gone before, and then Spider-Man and the Jackal have their moment where the Jackal essentially tells him, why he's doing it. He hates, he resents Spider-Man for letting Gwen Stacy die or killing Gwen Stacy. I forget exactly what he blames him for. And he hates him because I hate you because you're young. I hate you because Gwen loved you. Blah 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 blah. Typical supervillain. Silly supervillain behavior. Then he goes into kind of his own origin story about how he was brokenhearted when Gwen died, and he started messing around with the genetic samples, and Anthony Serbo thought they were cloning frogs, and it turned out that they were really human. And so Professor Warren then snapped and killed him, and came up with this Jackal identity, and so basically most of the story is the Jackal's origin story, and the Jackal lures Spider-Man to Shea Stadium, the late Shea Stadium, where he's kidnapped Ned and is threatening him. He's going to blow him up, and then he knocks Spider-Man out, and then Spider-Man is now facing his clone. So here we have the first battle of the first appearance of Ben Reilly.
There you go.
The first appearance of Ben Reilly. So, what do we have a fairly anticlimactic fight, where the Spider-Man and his clone fight, and the Jackal then all of a sudden comes to his senses, and decides to free Ned, and then Shea Stadium blows up, and apparently one of the Spider-Men is dead. The Jackal is dead. Gwen and Spider-Man are alive, and or the real Spider-Man, maybe, you know. So and
we got an epilogue too.
Yeah, and after that, Spider-Man and the Gwen clone go to the real Gwen's grave, and the Gwen clone walks out of Peter Parker's life.
Yep.
All right. Apparently.
There you go. There she goes. Epilogue dose. We got two more.
But here is a historic event, people. All right.
Oh.
This is it.
Uh-oh.
So Peter walks into his apartment.
Oh.
Guess who's waiting?
Spider Sense. Oh.
Yes, he's a Spider Sense.
It's her. It's got to be her.
Yeah. What the Spider Sense didn't go off when the Jackal was behind him, about to, you know, to hit slit him, but it goes off when Mary Jane's
behind the door. Finally, look at that.
All right, and then are you glad? You know, I'm glad to see you. Are you really?
You mean that, Tiger?
Here, I'll show you.
Look at that door. Look at that door. Oh!
Even when I was a kid, I knew what that meant.
Oh,
yeah,
what is
boys and girls,
what?
This is what most Spider-Man fans agree is when it happened. Yep. You know, it's a shame we couldn't have been in the room where it happened.
No, you don't need to see that. But, that cost you an extra $4.99.
Yeah, and you would have had to ask the pharmacist behind the counter. You know, they had been behind the counter, and you had to ask for it, or at least get your dad to ask for it for you. But anyway, so that's it. That's when Spider-Man that's
when he lost his virginity, allegedly.
Yeah, that was when, you know. And but what's funny?
Let's look at it one more time. There you go. Go get him, Tiger.
No doubt what happened there. Mary Jane did the walk of shame home that night, the next morning.
I don't think Mary Jane. I don't think it's a walk of shame when it's someone that you've known most of your life.
Yeah, she's been around for 100,
or not most of your life, but I mean, technically, he didn't meet her until they were both teenagers. So,
I think Jonathan Lopez sums it up best. Boom, chicka boom.
but it kind of what's a little ironic, not about Peter and Mary Jane there, but you know, we were last month, of course, we were complaining about how the Clone Saga, the other Clone Saga, you know, they went through all this and never resolved any of the issues, but what's funny here is that this Clone Saga didn't resolve a lot of issues either. There were still an awful lot of unanswered questions, so much so that in issue number 153, instead of a letters page. See, Conway had already taken a powder, apparently, but in 153, instead of a letters page,
here, throw it up. Let me see it.
I know, but I got to read. Roger Sliffer, boy assistant editor. So he came up with of jackals and juxtaposition. In other words,
the little
he
yellow
spent
box
a whole page explaining all the questions that people had.
Like, is all that white text explained, or is it?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, the yellow is just explaining that there were a lot of unanswered questions. So this Roger Stifler, hey, Stifler's mom. But things like, when did the Jackal find out that Peter was Spider-Man? I mean, you read through this, and I'm not going to read through it, but there's a lot of legitimate questions people had. Hey, wait a minute, what does this mean? Wait a minute, you know. And then it's like as a parting shot. Here. As the zillions of Marvel maniacs pointed out, that if Spider-Man's spider sense didn't alert him to his enemies, then why did it react to Mary Jane on the last page of Spider-Man 149? That's one even we can't figure out. So consider yourself no prized. So, you know, even then, everything wasn't perfectly wrapped up. But for the most part, but the difference is, even if they didn't quite wrap up every mystery, you still felt you got a satisfactory story. You know, you had a mystery. It unveiled over time. It resolved within a reasonable period of time. You had a definitive ending.
Yeah.
and that was it. And to be honest, we never expected to see any of these characters again.
It wasn't a 50-issue event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't meant to promote another title or another bunch of characters. Nobody else horned in on this event, like the Punisher or New Warriors or whatever. This was strictly a personal Spider-Man event, and it unfurled the way it should have. And
Hornacek says that letters page is an early version of Life of Reilly.
There you go. Yep.
Another thing that happened is I'm watching and listening to you as I remember this story. You also have Peter's personal life being affected by his superhero life, which is a nice balance, which is something I like. This advanced the Mary Jane and Peter relationship literally to the next level. I mean, this is milestone-ish of what happened for those two in this storyline.
Oh,
he really picked Mary Jane to move on.
Yeah, and in issue 150, which we have discussed on a previous version of Spider History,
right?
That's how Peter. Because the next issue is Peter wrestling with whether or not he's the clone, and and how he decides. Yeah, no chromium covers.
No checklist. There's no checklist that you have to understand this story. Yeah.
And it didn't even cross over with Marvel Team Up. But what was I thinking? But anyway, 150, that how he realizes that he wasn't the clone. Was because when Spencer Smythe has him in a Spider Slayer Death Grip or whatever, Spider-Man is thinking, what about Mary Jane? And he's thinking, now wait a minute, if I was a clone, I'd be thinking about Gwen. Or I'd be thinking about both Mary Jane and Gwen, but I'm thinking about Mary Jane. That was so. So
what's the grade on this one in 45-year hindsight?
I probably would have given. I gave it an A. I mean, it's a class. I mean, if it's a classic and in the top 10, it's probably got to have an A. Maybe a B plus if you're wanting to get real nitpicky or whatever. But
George, you hate clones. Did you hate this?
No, this would have been fine if it had been just left the way it was.
Yeah.
If it had just started and ended and dumping them in the smokestack and, hey, game over. It would have been a fine story.
Yeah. I liked it a lot back in the day. I did. I can't stand the follow-up, which takes place in 1988, Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 8, where the Gwen's clone comes back. I didn't understand that story to this day.
I'll help you. It was done so that people would buy it.
I mean, it was tied into the High Evolutionary Annuals crossover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Evolutionary War or something.
Evolutionary War. That was it. Yeah. It was. I couldn't get it.
And it was. Again, it was promoting the like I said, what were they? The Young Gods or something like that. But to be honest, since I always speculated that actually it was Conway retconning his own clone story because again in the 70s, I mean, if you remember in the 70s, science fiction was full of a lot of clone scares, clone movie. We were starting to, I don't know if like Dolly the sheep was happening at this, but cloning, there was a lot of I remember like there were a lot of sci-fi movies relating to cloning. So it was a big thing. It was a big thing in science fiction at the time. And then as time progressed and, we sort of started to understand it a little more, it was like, no, you can't grow a clone from a single cell. I mean, that's not how it's going to work, so that's kind of how I thought, well, maybe Conway was just, retconning his own story because it didn't make scientific sense anymore. Well, in the 70s seemed logical, time had proven that it wasn't, so he kind of retconned it. Back to the 90s now, we're starting, the cloning is picking up again, and it kind of picked up as a, so.
And it's interesting that clones to this day are still referenced in Spider-Man. They're such a big part of it, and that's due to the Clone Saga picking it back up from that 70s storyline. Love it or not, it's still a part of Spider-Man's history.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like World War I and World War II. They're very ugly, but you can't tell world history without them, and you can't tell Spider-Man history without the Clone Saga. For better
Adam
or for worse.
says that Nicholas Hammond's Spider-Man live-action show even had a Night of the Clones episode starring who? Morgan Fairchild.
Yep.
We'll have more on that later. All the subsequent Clone Story retcons just made things more confusing rather than simplifying or fixing the problem the stories had, says Vinkman. Very true. I personally am not a fan of Clone Stories, and the fact that it just I would rather have someone besides the hero. I like an internal battle, not a physical battle with yourself. That's why with the Hulk, one of my favorite moments of the Hulk is when he goes internal and Banner is standing where Hulk is. And he's got Joe Fixit. He's got multiple versions of himself. I don't like those multiple versions out in front of him.
Best clone story ever told.
Yeah.
Best clone story ever told. It's not Spider-Man because it's
not. Yeah.
Is Superman 3.
Oh, and the
when he fights the bad Superman in the bar.
Yeah.
And then outside
he's
there,
taking peanuts and hitting the mirror with it. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was the best part. That was the best part of Superman 3. Christopher Reeve did a great job with that. Remember, he threw the tires on top of Clark, and then Clark.
And you had to know he enjoyed playing Superman as a
I remember the colors are muted on the Superman suit, like he's just been out there and just getting grime on it. Yeah. This is more like Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2. I don't know. Anyway,
I think he means in that Secret Wars is the original and it's great. And Secret Wars 2 is the clone and it's ass.
Remember, this is George's segment. I mean, JR's segment, so he'll disagree. Anything Secret Wars is good.
Well, no, I know exactly.
Yeah.
What he's saying, though. I mean, initial story, and for what I mean, again, besides what I thought of the story, it was what it was. It was a major story. It had an impact, whatever. And then Marvel decided to go cash grab it and, screwed it up.
Jonathan, you have the original, and then you have the clone. Yeah. You have cool superhero fights on every page. And then you have Spider-Man teaching the Beyonder how to poop.
He peed. Jonathan is referencing the 90s Spider-Man cartoon where Mary Jane was a water clone. So we've got clones in that show too. I remember that. Didn't the first clone of Captain Kirk happen in Little Girls Are Made Of in Star Trek History of Clone History?
Well, he really wasn't. He wasn't a clone. He was an android. They were androids.
And I don't consider stuff like mirror universe like in Star Trek. That's not clones. That's legitimate storytelling. The mirror universe is fascinates me in Star Trek. It really does. I mean, it's crazy. But it's not clone crap. It's it's original versus a different version of the original, but it's not a cartoon.
If you watch season 2 of the Star Trek Discovery, you might like it. You might like it. If you like mirror.
I can't get past those asinine new Klingons. No, it's not going to happen.
It's got Captain Pike in it.
Well, no, the mirror story was in season 1. Captain Pike was in season 2, but the mirror.
Oh, was it? What season?
Yeah, it was. That was because when Jason Isaacs, Captain Lorca, it turned out that he was.
That's a spoiler.
Says the guy who wanted to know who the mysterious vagrant was.
Oh yeah, the Riker clone. I remember that on Star Trek Next Gen. Yeah, Riker getting stuck. I mean. There was a Data and Laura clone.
Laura's not really a clone.
No, he's just
android. He's just another android.
Just another android. There were different android. At least 3 that we know of?
Yeah, there was Data, there was Laura, and then there was B4.
B4,
at the end of Nemesis, which then he was dismantled in Picard or whatever. And
so, final thoughts on the 45th anniversary of the Clone Saga, JR.
Well, it was a classic then. It's a classic now.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately, it spawned something not so classic or classic in its own way.
Do you think that maximum clonage is the very bottom of the well of the Clone Saga? Did it not get any worse than that?
Boy, the thing is, some of the stories that came afterwards were pretty awful too.
I mean, that one ranks pretty low for me.
Oh, it's definitely pretty low.
Yeah.
In the way that it continues the character assassination of Peter Parker, and in a way, just it doesn't make. I mean, it's just a horrible story. But the thing is, though, some of the other ones that followed were just terrible. Maybe they weren't offensive, but they were terrible.
Yeah. 45 years later, George, Clone Saga Volume 1. What did you think?
Would have been fine as a standalone story that no one ever touched again, but the fact that so much crap came out of it decades later kind of ruins the legacy for it.
Yeah. But what makes it an A for me is
we know. Yes, we know.
This is this. Yes. And click. And we're done. We're shutting the door on this episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching 4 podcasts in a row of recording on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, shining a light up in the sky. Everybody is seeing this episode now with 4 different locations. So I thought that's kind of cool. So thanks for joining us, everybody.